All right, so this is the somewhat generically named Song of Ice and Fire Star Wars panel. The format is going to be that we've each got kind of a thesis, not a thesis exactly, but a topic we'd like to explore. We're going to talk through it. There'll be time for you guys to ask questions. We'll talk about it amongst ourselves a little bit. We are also, due to the proposal that was promised, we are down a member today than what we expected.
But that's fine.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine.
We'll give it to him. He got his age yesterday.
Yeah.
He's fine.
This panel, actually, the ideas for this panel went back, like a lot of the panels this year, to 2020, before it was canceled. We had to pick a different target, more pandemically functional target. Dantooine was not going to be an effective target. So we named this year as our target. And yeah, we're each gonna go through something here. Any questions before we dive in? Yes, you want to do introductions now? That's a good idea.
Usually I do it.
I like to switch things up. Why don't we start with Justin in the end?
I'm Mr. J on Twitter. I'll be Justin. And, this is my first panel.
My name's Aaron Moats. Everything's right here if you guys ever want to try to get in touch with me. Also my first panel. But I'm excited.
Yeah. Also the host of the Star Wars.
I do have a small Star Wars themed podcast called the Star Wars Legends Lounge, and basically I just go over some of the books in the older Star Wars Legends line of books before everything got reset after Disney bought Lucasfilm.
It is a great podcast. About half an hour each episode. It does a really good job.
Can you guys hear us okay? I know there's a lot of...
Not really.
I'm going to try to move it closer. How's that?
That's better.
How about for Justin?
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
When you lean in, yeah.
All right. Okay, we're going to start with me. If you've listened to the Damas Fingers I'm Scad. Sorry, introduction. I'm Scad. I'm part of the Damas Fingers podcast. That's it, I guess. So we're going to start with my topic. If you've listened to the Damas Fingers podcast, you've heard us refer to Death Star, dragons as Death Stars many times. We kind of use that analogy a lot. And so I'm just going to go into that a little bit and some of the origins and why we think that, some of the more specific language from Star Wars that kind of ties it together a little bit. So the conception of the Death Stars, where I'd like to start, the Sith had long had plans for a Death Star-like object that they could use to kind of control the masses while they could pursue higher pursuits that were less mundane than keeping control of the lemmings that wandered around the universe. But they very much wanted the control, but didn't want to spend the time to do it. So they wanted something like this to take care of that heavy lifting. Construction of the Death Star started off with Geonosis. Tarkin was involved later, but it started with Palpatine. As you guys probably know from episode 1 and 2 and 3, Palpatine playing both sides of the war throughout, and using it, frankly, as a distraction to get through the goals that he wants, like building the Death Star, from the opposite side. And Dooku, there's that scene in Attack of the Clones that you might remember, with Geonosians. Thanks, podcast guy. The Geonosians give Dooku a little device that's got a projection of the Death Star, and they say we can't let the designs for this weapon fall into the wrong hands. So this isn't an idea that Tarkin came up with, but it was kind of his pet project along with Orson Krennic. If you've seen Rogue One, you know more about Orson Krennic's story. But really, what we kind of learn about is something that's related to that whole Sith ideal of keeping people in check. It's something called the Tarkin Doctrine. I'm going to read it here if you know what it is, or if you don't know what it is, here it is. This bold vision of the future requires not only the service of those immaculate reputation and consummate skill in the just exercise of power, but also the service of a vast military dedicated to upholding the laws necessary to ensure galactic harmony. It may appear to some that the enactment of universal laws and the widespread deployment of a heavily armed military are steps towards galactic domination. But these actions are taken merely to protect us from those who invade, enslave, exploit, or foment political dissent, and to punish accordingly any who engage in such acts. Look on our new military not as trespassers or interlopers, but as gatekeepers, here to shore up the Emperor's vision of a pacified and prosperous galaxy. So that whole doctrine is used to explain why they need a Death Star. They can replace, it's just a short step, replacing a vast military with a single object that they can control to instill fear, to be a menacing object that will keep people in line. The Song of Ice and Fire comparison here that I like to use, it's not perfect, but is Aegon V. Aegon V attempted to bring dragons back into the world at Summerhall, caused a huge fire, killed some people that we hold dear in our hearts, Dunk and Mini Dunk, and, you know. But he dumped the lesser. But he did this out of a desire to get dragons back. He'd seen, it's been 100 years since the dance. The dragons have been gone, and he's seen a tremendous amount of rebellion and woe and conflict. But he can also see that the preceding 100 years before that were relatively peaceful, and he can put together why. The dragons are a menacing instrument of war that can keep the lords cowering in fear and not rising up. And so while we think of Egg as a good guy, he's kind of got a thought process like Palpatine here. It also, though, does compare the ages-long conflicts between Sith and Jedi and Palpatine's desire to overcome that struggle. Kind of can remind us of Valyria and Old Gis as well. Old Gis ruled for thousands of years, but the discovery of dragons spelled doom for their armies. They lost 5 wars in a row, and they were just swept away, right, after ruling for thousands of years, because these instruments of death came upon them just like a Death Star that just kind of flipped the tables completely. So, let's see. One thing that they have in common here between the Song of Ice and Fire and Star Wars 2 is an example. So, Tarkin and Krennic, as soon as it was completed, needed an example to show the galaxy the power that they had. They used Jedha first, you saw that in Rogue One, as a kind of test balloon, but very shortly thereafter, I don't know, it's days, I think, they target, he asks for the target, Leia says Dantooine, they choose Alderaan instead, a planet of 2 billion people, to serve as this example so that people can see the menace that they have here and the power. Aegon had a slightly different task. This is Aegon the First now. But the same goal. He needed people to see and to tell the story to each other, the destructive capability of these dragons, right? And so he had Harrenhal, he had the Field of Fire, presented those opportunities to just wreck these armies in a very complete way. It was an army 5 times his size he defeated the Field of Fire, right? And we can see that it worked. Torrhen Stark bent the knee. He saw the folly of sacrificing his armies because he had these examples to look at. And so we can see that the model works. There's some undoing, though. Someone always tells in Star Wars, Galen Erso gives up the plans, and Jyn and Cassian uncover them, or whether it's many Bothan spies for the second Death Star, Finn himself, coming to the other side and giving the secret for Starkiller base of what they can do. These secrets to these super weapons are always discovered and exploited. In Song of Ice and Fire, it's a little bit different. The volcanoes, known as the 14 Flames, actually destroyed Valyria. We don't know exactly how, though, there's theories abound, but we do know that somewhat metaphorically, the flames brought Valyria to its knees. The dragons were known as children of the volcanoes. And so that's interesting. They kind of brought death upon themselves, think about it that way. And then more recently, the political action from within House Targaryen brought the end to the dragons and the Dance of Dragons. The infighting and greed caused them to implode, right? And so these super weapons they don't seem to be maintainable in either universe, Song of Ice and Fire or Star Wars. And so what's the future? Dany's back with dragons. Only winds and dance can tell us if Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion will meet the same fate as Starkiller Base, or whether it'll go a different way. If there's an unspoken thesis here, I guess it's look what happens when you build super weapons to intimidate people. It doesn't go well for you. There's always a way to blow it up, as Han says, and as Luke, Lando, and Wedge, to some degree, and Poe show, you can always blow it up. In the case of dragons, they're just unpredictable, and the people that control them are even more so. So that's the thesis. Look what happens. Keep those super weapons to yourself. That's all I got. Was it really fast? I feel like I blacked out.
It was beautiful.
It was great, yeah, you were on a roll.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that we do actually have more than 2 people in the audience, and there are at least half a dozen people wearing Star Wars shirts,
I love it.
which is fantastic.
I love it. I see Vader in that. Yeah. I think it's the first time I've seen a round of applause for people wearing shirts for themselves.
This is
Pretty
awesome.
good. I like it. Any questions from you guys? Thoughts? Dragons as Death Stars? Yeah. Okay. What about you guys? Anything to add?
Well, I
Are
would
you
say.
gonna fact check me?
No.
I love it.
No fact check. Just, I would say, narratively, they're used. George and George are of a similar age, come from a similar time. They lived through the Vietnam era. They've used that and the Cold War to influence their storytelling. I have always thought of both as an allegory of the United States' use of the nuclear bombs during World War II and how that was kind of used to intimidate the rest of the world throughout the Cold War years. I think narratively that's how they work.
Sorry, what you're telling me is that fiction applies to real life?
I think real life influences fiction.
Absolutely. Influences as storytellers, right? Right.
But Aaron, you also forget that this took place in a galaxy far, far away.
Sure. A long time ago.
A long time ago.
Write what you know, though, they say, right?
Yeah.
And both George and George kind of, they saw these things. It's good. I like it. Thank you. Anything else? Yeah, John.
So the dragons do not take nearly the resources that building a Death Star would for you.
It's true. It takes the manpower of one sleeping baby Targaryen to wake it from the dragon.
So it's a much more efficient use of
Yeah.
projecting.
Except when you got to feed them and they're eating herds of sheep.
True, and
Environmentally
but you're not,
friendly nuclear bomb.
but you're not using thousands and thousands of people to build millions.
And
the money that would associate with. So, yeah.
That could be a good thing and a bad thing. You're employing
Well,
thousands of
that's
people.
true, but yeah, that's.
From the clerk's
that's-
argument.
But I was thinking if you were the king, it basically means you can project a lot more force for a lot less resources.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And I wonder, I haven't thought about it, but I wonder how that really plays into the greed and the desire to take control, because it feels, it's like, we can get another one. Like the Death Star gets blown up, it's like, that's going to take forever. But the Dragon's like, we can sacrifice one or two. Let's try to take control. It's interesting. Thanks for bringing that up, John. They use the Matrix method of, human batteries to wake the dragons out of their eggs. Anybody else? John again, different one.
You mentioned Aegon the Fifth, and he had a good plan to marry his kids to great houses, but that plan failed spectacularly. So he had no other plan, so he's like, magic, let's try the dragon. So
Yeah.
it's negotiations with the lightsaber. We gotta try it the peaceful way, and that failed.
I like the comparison. Yeah, I like it. You wonder if he had looked back at the history and said, these alliances are going to be enough, or it's still not enough, and I need dragons. They would have tried anyway. You wonder. I don't know. But yeah, things could definitely played out differently had that worked out, like you said. Anything else?
Shoot it in a really small spot to destroy it. Gotta have really good aim.
Yeah, the Men of Dale would say so. Reaching across fandoms, the Men of Dale find the one little chink in the dragon armor at Lake Town to bring down Smog. You know, the TV show, I think, we haven't seen it in the books yet, right? But the TV show, I think, which I didn't watch, but I think they make it a little bit easier to bring them down than I would have expected. Yeah?
That wasn't there.
We had a Hellholt, right?
I think that's a touchy subject.
Yeah. Hellholt saw the destruction of Meraxes. Did I get that one right? Yep. Meraxes. Which with, you know, I think it was a single scorpion bolt, so it certainly can happen. All right. Should we move on? Let's go with modes.
All right, everybody out in the audience, show of hands. Who likes the bad guys? Exactly.
Everyone.
Me too. It doesn't matter if it's complicated. If it's a complicated, flawed person who's doing what they think is best for themselves or for society, or simply the guy in a black hat twirling his little mustache. I usually find the bad guys pretty cool. Maybe that's why I like the Lannisters so much in Song of Ice and Fire.
Feed off your tears.
And
now you know
guys,
Song of
he's just
Ice
the dark side.
Exactly.
Now you understand.
And the Sith in the Star Wars universe. I think they're some of the most interesting characters in their respective stories because not only do they do the things that we wish we could do when we've had a rough day and we're alone in our thoughts, but, okay, except for the patriarch of each family, some of them can be sympathetic figures. Do they do terrible things? Absolutely. Are they irredeemable? I would say for the most part, yes, they are irredeemable. But do they want some of the same things that the good guys want? Love, recognition, security? Again, yes. So, Tywin is Emperor Palpatine. He's shrewd, ruthless, willing to make a deal with anyone that will further his agenda. Tywin used the War of Five Kings for Lannister gain, whether it was by sending the Mountain to terrorize the Riverlands, setting up marriage alliances with the Starks and Tyrells, or writing his letters to Roose Bolton and Walder Frey. Tywin played all sides of the war, just like Palpatine did during the Clone Wars. Palpatine manipulated galactic tax policies, banking regulations, pushed many of the Outer Rim planets to secede, and oversaw the formation of two armies. But what both Tywin and Sheev did best was to move their adversaries into positions that were damaging to themselves while benefiting Tywin and Palps. Tywin could fight a war of attrition, knowing the South had more money and resources than the North. He knew that Robb would be desperate to end the war as quickly as possible. And in that desperation, Tywin bet that Robb would eventually make a mistake. And of course he did. Palpatine manipulated the Jedi into taking control of the clone army, of leading the war instead of following the Jedi Code to help people of the galaxy, acting as guardians for peace and justice. Both men are devious, they're cunning, they're both out for power, and they're laser focused on the only causes they actually care about, advancing the Lannister family line or the Sith Grand Plan. Example 2, Jaime. He was the pride of the Lannister line when he was younger. Handsome, a gifted fighter, and only interested in two things: the tales of great warriors and their heroic deeds, and forbidden love, just like Anakin Skywalker. But Jaime wasn't just in love with his sister, he was obsessed with her. Just like Anakin was obsessed with Padme Amidala and keeping his loved ones safe. And both Jaime and Anakin allowed others to manipulate their obsessions. When Cersei was first brought to King's Landing, she convinced Jaime to join the King's Guard so they could be closer together. Later, when she married Robert, she continued to invite Jaime into her bed to spite the marriage. Similarly, Anakin allowed himself to be manipulated. After his mother was abducted and killed by Tusken Raiders, Palpatine started sending Anakin visions of Padme dying, and then used his desire to keep his wife safe to turn the Chosen One against the Jedi. It wouldn't be until years later, after the two had become Kingslayer and Darth Vader, that they would come to understand just how they were used. Jaime and Vader are obsessive. They're needy. They're greedy. They're filled with guilt and pain. And they both lost their right hand. Now, Cersei's chapters are some of my favorites in A Song of Ice and Fire. It's just, I find it fun to get a look inside of her head. She's all over the place. She's anxious, angry, conceited, paranoid, and above all, searching for recognition. Cersei wants to be respected and feared. I think on some level she wants to be loved. And she wants Tywin to realize that she's best equipped to advance the Lannister ambitions. Cersei is Darth Maul. Maul wants nothing more to prove to Sidious that he's a worthy apprentice. And he wants Sidious's acknowledgement and respect. But when both Cersei and Maul are cast aside by their fathers for more desirable options, both of them rage. They break from reality. Cersei destroys the Tower of the Hand, relishing in the flames. It's almost orgasmic for her. She takes over Tommen's small council, appointing weak leaders and yes-men. Maul becomes an agent of chaos, taking control of the underworld, attacking both the Republic and Separatist governments. But neither will ever get what they really want. Tywin's murder robs Cersei of any chance that she'll get her father's approval. And Palpatine, taking Dooku and then Anakin as his apprentices, robs Maul from his place in the Sith grand plan. Cersei and Maul embody resentment, their paranoia, their rage. They're unhinged, and they both crave acceptance from an unloving father figure. Now finally we have Tyrion, the youngest of the Lannister clan. He's smart, he's an efficient manager. And at times, to me, it seems that Tyrion can see a bigger picture of what would be best for everyone in King's Landing. That doesn't mean he's a good person. He's not. He does terrible things. To most of Westeros, Tyrion is a monster. For most of the Republic, so is Count Dooku. In the decades leading up to the Clone Wars, the former Jedi became disillusioned with the Order, of how it became more political and neglected the needs of the Outer Rim planets for the bureaucracy of Coruscant. Tyrion tried to keep the people of King's Landing fed and safe. Dooku rallied the Outer Rim to demand more from the Republic government. Tyrion and Dooku are smart. Both served as public leaders while the real power lay with their fathers/masters. Both are tossed aside when their usefulness is used up. Are Tyrion and Dooku bad people trying to do good? Could they have been good people at some point that ended up doing terrible things for what they believed were the right reasons? Or are they both? The Lannisters and the Sith. Two factions I love and I love to hate. Both are selfish. They do horrible things. They want power and influence. But they're also more complicated than simple fantasy villain templates. And for me, that makes them really fun and interesting. Thoughts?
Any questions or anything anybody wants to add?
I have something for you. You mentioned the Sith Grand Plan
Yes.
a couple times. Can you give me the dime store version real quick? Or even the nickel store version?
The Sith Grand Plan began with Darth Bane about 1,000 years before the movies that we saw, when the Sith went into hiding. And it was basically, from then on out, there were going to be two Sith, a master and an apprentice. At some point, the apprentice would learn enough to take down the master and get an apprentice for themselves. They work in secret and slowly gain power and influence over the galaxy until they could take over the galaxy. Sidious is the culmination of 1,000 years of that Sith Grand Plan.
It's a good nickel store version, man.
His election campaign.
Is there a skin changer grand plan where there's one green seer and a green seer and Bran starts the culmination of thousands of years of change their lives?
They never need to know what
That'd be interesting if you would consider like a Jedi and Padawan relationship.
I never said we're there.
I don't think it works because I do believe the Bloodraven and Bran are more
Say they were necessarily going to go into
in the gray than what George Lucas intended the Jedi to be and what he has explained the Jedi to be. Of course, their fall was because they lost their way. But that'd be something interesting, that if maybe in the future, since we are down now to basically one Jedi in Rey and possibly a Padawan in Finn, if they would,
a White Walker would be a good.
I guess, assume a similar structure.
White Walker has not previously watched.
I don't think the Jedi would ever want to rule. I think my hopes are for any future storytelling with them is that they decide to go back to what the Jedi were originally intended to be, which are people just roaming the galaxy, helping others in need.
Yeah, I don't think Bran should be running around with magic that will drive you crazy.
Anyone else? Questions, comments, concerns?
So, you mentioned Maul and his lack of feeling appreciated, his desire to prove himself. Palpatine took Dooku as his apprentice after Maul fell, right? Mm-hmm. So he had to take someone on.
Correct.
Is the sense that Maul didn't feel like he'd already proven himself by becoming the apprentice originally, or does he just feel displaced now, even though he got chopped in half and Sidious has to move on?
I think it's a combination. I mean, obviously, as I said before, in order for the apprentice to really think that they have achieved all the acceptance they want from the master, they have to learn everything that the master has. And then it's their obligation to take them out.
Right.
Maul never got to that point. And yes, Lucas just decided years later, I'm gonna bring Maul back. Filoni, figure out how to bring Maul back, okay? So they had to figure out a way, with Maul back in the picture, how he would react to a new apprentice. And the only way, well, I shouldn't say the only way, but the way they figured out how to react was to just make Maul this agent of chaos. That was supposed to be me, you know? And he just became unhinged at some point.
And that tracks to Cersei as well, right? It's supposed to be me.
Yeah,
Right.
it's supposed to be me.
And Tywin doesn't have any other options.
Right.
He doesn't have a Dooku waiting in the wings
Sure.
because Tyrion's gone.
Right, in Tywin's eyes, Cersei is not worthy. Because she's a woman. Let's just face it, that's why she's not worthy in Tywin's eyes. In Sidious's eyes, Maul's not worthy because Maul failed. The Jedi took him out. Well, I must have made the wrong choice. I need someone new. Thanks. Justin?
All right, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit here. Talk about something that is a big deal in both A Song of Ice and Fire and in Star Wars, and that's prophecy. Everyone in this room I know knows the prince that was promised. In my research for this, I ended up into a really weird rabbit hole, and it took me to a really wonderful place with both Star Wars and A Song of Ice and Fire. We know that prophecy has played an important role of how the Targaryens ruled and the madness that it led to. We see a very similar prophecy with the Jedi called the Chosen One, and how the Jedi adherence to this prophecy ultimately led to the downfall and then rebirth of the Jedi Order. We have yet to see how the prophecy of the prince that was promised is fulfilled. But we have been given a couple of ideas of who that person is. Daenerys believes she is the princess that was promised because she is the last Targaryen. And we have seen the groundwork laid for Jon to be the prince that was promised because he is the apparent product of Rhaegar and Lyanna. So if there's anyone in this room that doesn't know what the prince that was promised is that a question, or you don't know?
That's just Frank being Frank, I think.
It was part of an ancient prophecy which foretells the coming of a hero to deliver the world. A bleeding star is supposed to herald the coming of the prince, and he is said to have the Song of Ice and Fire. Unknown is where this prophecy originates. Melisandre claims that the prophecy is 5,000 years old and comes from a book from Ashai. And Mel also mentions that the prince that was promised and Azor Ahai are interchangeable. We see when the red star bleeds and darkness gathers, Azor Ahai shall be reborn amid salt and smoke. This is very, very similar to the Jedi's Chosen One prophecy. A chosen one shall come, born of no father, and through him will ultimate balance in the Force be restored. And this is a Jedi prophecy that was recorded on a holocron by an unknown Jedi, and no one actually knows how long it's been around.
As soon as they saw it, yeah.
Sorry, technical issues. An ancient Jedi prophecy. The meaning of this prophecy was debated. Some thought both light and dark side of the Force had to be equal in order for balance. Others believed that the light was the natural state of the Force and the rise of the dark side was the imbalance. Sidious believed, for those that don't know, Sidious is Palpatine, believed that the dark needed to be free and the light needed to be suppressed for balance to happen. So from there, my little rabbit hole, I came to the realization that Azor Ahai and Anakin Skywalker are the same character. Azor Ahai is a legendary hero who wielded a lightsaber, Lightbringer. According to the ancient Jedi texts, books from Ashai, Azor Ahai is reborn again as the champion of Rolor. It will occur after a long summer when the evil cold darkness descends upon the world. Wielding Lightbringer, again, Azor Ahai will stand against the darkness. If he fails, the world fails. Then we have Anakin Skywalker, who's born of no father to Shmi Skywalker. He is the strongest known Force user. Jedi Masters are always distrustful of Anakin, especially as he got closer with Chancellor Palpatine. Eventually, he falls to the dark side and brings balance to the Force as Darth Vader, wiping out all of the Jedi. Anakin and Vader both become legendary figures, much like Azor Ahai. Will Azor Ahai follow a similar route to Anakin and become a scourge of the realm instead of a savior? I have a couple of wonderful quotes here. You are the chosen one. It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them. Bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness. That was Obi-Wan Kenobi to Anakin. I guess technically it was Vader at that point. But it's very similar to something that Tyrion Lannister said to Jorah Mormont. Prophecy is like a half-trained mule. It looks as though it might be useful, but the moment you trusted it, it kicks you in the head. And what that means is, Obi-Wan and the Jedi believed that Anakin's balancing the Force was that he was supposed to be a beacon of light. It never dawned on them that he might be the beacon of evil and to initiate that balance. Tyrion's basically called prophecy what it is, right? You're putting your trust in something that you don't really understand. And depending on how you interpret that, you're either going to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy and you're going to do everything in your power to make sure that prophecy actually happens. Or you're going to interpret completely wrong and, start thinking that Stannis is Azor Ahai instead of Jon Snow when you see visions in your flames. That's all I got about that. Any questions?
It like made that point because
You touched on fabled blades. We have lightsabers.
Yeah.
Weapons. On Star Wars universe, we have the dark sabers.
like justified.
Are there other fabled lightsabers in the universe that, have names or might be really old?
Well, we see in the sequel trilogy, everyone's after Luke's lightsaber. I've always personally found that funny because that lightsaber was originally Anakin's. So it is actually, if you go back that far and it being Anakin's lightsaber, it truly is a legendary weapon that's been handed down, right? Through now 3 generations. Yep, literally handed down. Right, so in that case, you do have a legendary weapon. I don't know that many Jedi actually named their lightsabers. I know, like, Sam Jackson's got BMF on it, that he got it personally engraved, so he could always say he was a bad motherfucker. That kind of legendary too. Or the fact that he told George Lucas that he wanted to put the lightsaber so he could find himself in the battles.
It's just wide eyes like watching.
Those are like meta famous reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah, the Darksaber is an ancient Mandalorian, the first Mandalorian Jedi, and literally was supposed to be the symbol of the leader of the Mandalorians, the Mandalore. And it stayed in that clan for generations. And as we get more shows sort of dealing with that, we're seeing that there might be something special with that, because if you don't know how to wield it, it's apparently really heavy. But there's been numerous wielders of it where, Darth Maul had it for a while, Bo-Katan had it for a while, Sabine Wren had it for a while, and now Din Djarin has it. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. And much like the Valyrian swords will play a part in a couple of books, hopefully.
Hey Justin,
Yeah.
you mentioned that Anakin was supposed to bring balance to the Force and fulfill that, be the chosen one, fulfill that destiny. And Obi-Wan, that quote that you read, implies that he doesn't, but we all know that he does bring balance to the Force, or at least we thought he did at the end of Return of the Jedi, and then of course Palpatine lived, so there was still. Anyway, my question is, when Luke saw Anakin bring balance to the Force by ending Palpatine, do you believe that's what happened? Because technically Luke was now around and a Jedi, and so there was imbalance. And if so, why do you think, if Luke is, this great Jedi, which I hear people of the extended universe believe, that ends up becoming basically one of the most powerful Jedi ever, that if he knows that chosen one philosophy and believes it, why would he have ever thought of starting a school? Should he have not let it go?
Because I think with what a lot of people forget when it comes to the Jedi is that even when we see them, like in the Phantom Menace, we see them fairly prominently, but they've been on the decline for a long time. And by the time we hit A New Hope, they're almost a myth, right? They were so few that when they pop up, like Luke literally was trained in a backwater world and probably was never told anything about it. Because Yoda was probably like, we fucked up. We misinterpreted it and it wiped us all out. If I do this again, what am I leaving for the rest? Like, what am I putting the universe in? I think we saw Anakin fulfill that prophecy numerous times. One when he turned to Darth Vader, one when he became Anakin again, and then even later on, his legacy with Kylo Ren and Rey and Sidious. Right? Ultimately we get one Jedi, one Sith at the end, who encompass all the Sith and all the Jedi. Be interesting to see what the ancient Jedi text make Rey do next.
Thanks. Any other questions out there?
So the comparison of Jamie with Anakin made me think for a second you were saying Joffrey is like Luke Skywalker, and it just made me laugh. So I just wanted to point that out. I was like, who of Jamie's children is like the chosen one who's going to fix anything? Because they're all going to be dead by the end of the books, definitely. So.
Yeah.
Game, set, match.
Well, if we look at also Jamie and Luke, they actually have a lot more in common than, because they both lost their hand, they both kissed their sister. Yeah.
I guess it's a good thing that Luke wasn't. I guess you could say it was a good thing that Luke wasn't illegitimate. You know.
It's such a different comparison. I like the question because it's a whole nature nurture thing with Joffrey. Luke went to a place where he was removed completely from all of these influences, other than Obi-Wan kind of watching him, and we'll see what the show does with that, if there really is any influence there. I'm interested to see. I don't know what the Legends canon says about that, but.
Not a whole lot. There is the Kenobi book, but the Kenobi book is Luke is an infant.
Yeah.
Kenobi's just giving him to Lars family. Luke's only a couple of weeks old.
And Obi-Wan was instructed to watch him and not to train him. So, he's removed from it, right? Whereas Joffrey is like inundated in the Lannister garbage. So there is no comparison for Luke because Luke got a fucking break.
So if Joffrey was, raised somewhere secretly, maybe with some good parents.
I'm a big believer in nurture, but
I have always thought that a more apt comparison that way for Luke would be Jon Snow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The hidden baby with the secret.
Watched over by a quote-unquote teacher, watched over by Ned, watched over by Kenobi. At some point, that teacher has to die.
Yeah, watched over by his mom.
So.
Great question.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Big Frank, go for it, man.
It was actually like, they wanted you to know, the author wanted you to know, these were parts of
Perspective actors who
they were not going to be like inappropriate part of the sort. They were going to
do
be.
you see any big differences, or are they kind of both fulfilling
Never actually done
that particular argument?
Maybe you should bring that.
I think a lot of these characters compare to a lot of the others. Like I said, I compared Tywin to Palpatine. I think you can easily compare Tywin to Tarkin. Tarkin's doctrine is basically rule by fear. We look at Tywin. It's basically ruled by fear.
Yeah, he sets the mountain.
Exactly.
That rides out there to intimidate and fear and burn everything and scare everyone to death. It's a similar.
Tarkin is a manager. Tywin's a manager. You know, I think a lot of these comparisons would fit.
Yeah.
Luke being Jaime, Luke being Jon Snow. You could make any of them fit.
Back to Tarkin being a manager. One of the interesting things is how he and Krennic battled for control of the Death Star project. They both really wanted it and were striving for those promotions. And you see that with Tywin, right? He's always making sure he's one step ahead of the people that are kind of competing for that spot, right? He's doing it through letter writing, he's doing it through war, he's doing it through, you know, other means sometimes, but he's always trying to stay one step ahead of that competition.
In Star Wars, it's really clear, like black and white, good and bad. And in Assign White Empire, it's not, right? It's like gray, everybody has both, whatever. But you compared the dragons to Death Stars, so does that mean that you think that Danny on that side is going to be the bad? Or what do you define as the good and the bad for Assign White Empire?
Yeah, so I believe Danny's future isn't written yet. You know, without bashing season 8, which I didn't watch, I believe her future isn't written yet. And I kind of said it a little bit at the end of my thing there. I think if she uses those dragons as weapons, it's not going to go well for her. I think that's the theme we're seeing. Whether it's a short-term loss or long-term betrayal, people don't like being ruled by fear, and it's not going to end well for her. But I believe that Danny still has agency. I think she's got a beautiful mind. I think she has a big heart that gets, she gets in her own way sometimes. But I think she's got it in her to make the right call there and not use those dragons that way. Her last chapter leads us the other way. You know, dragons don't plant trees, or is that I can't remember exactly. But, you know, that implies she's down to burn shit. But I believe in Danny. I don't think George spent all his time to turn that beautiful character into a death machine after all he's given us with the history, showing us what taking that path does. She's the last Targaryen. She's got to fix it. So it's an unpopular opinion in the fandom, but that's where I am with Danny. Anything else?
That was really nice. I disagree.
I want to hear what you think, Grant.
I don't know the books as well as most of you in the audience, but from what I do remember reading, Daenerys' story as it goes further along, she almost seems like she wants to be a Messiah in the way that I read it, and that if she...
Lysa, right?
Yeah. And if at some point she is not given that recognition, it's not going to go well for the people around her. Whether it is Aegon VI coming in and then people rallying behind him, or eventually Jon and people rallying behind him, I just don't think it's going to go well for anyone who does not recognize Daenerys for who Daenerys wants to be recognized as.
Yeah, you're gonna have to take this offline. I got thoughts on that. Anybody else? Well, we're 7 minutes from time. That's pretty good work, I think, given that we lost a panelist in his entire 7-minute thread.
We didn't lose him. You know.
Before everyone leaves, if you want them, if you guys know K2, she had to leave this morning. She was handing out stickers. She never got to hand out all the stickers. They're House Reed stickers. Baby Yoda is House Reed, if anyone wants them. with his little frogs and everything. If anyone wants them. She just wanted me to let everyone take a sticker who wanted a sticker.
This panel was a bit of an experiment for this kind of thing, so thank you guys for coming out to support it. Hope you guys liked it.
Thanks, guys.